All right, another coach's interview, and I'm really pleased to have Coach Griffin with me. So, Coach, just before we get started, I'm sorry, I'm moving on this chair because it's got wheels. I'm just kind of moving around. Tell us a little bit about yourself, so everyone knows who you are, what you do.
Absolutely. So my name is Coach Griffith. I actually just took a full-time coaching position at Mount Verde Academy. Pretty good chance I'll be going over to China to coach there. Previous to this, I was at the university.
Pro level?
This will actually be at the youth level.
Okay.
At the youth level, so middle school and high school age kids over in China.
Yeah.
At a school called Peking University. Before that, I've spent a decent amount of time at the prep school level, coaching the NEPSAC at Loomis Chaffee in Connecticut. This previous year, I was at Trinity Prep in Winter Park, Florida. I was a graduate assistant where I did my master's at the University of Connecticut. I spent a lot of time at the high school level prior to that. Big traveler, like to go overseas. When I go overseas a lot, I'll do a lot of coaching and player clinics as well. I've been to Vietnam, Kenya, Cuba, Dominican Republic, really all over, and love what I do. So excited to be here and have this conversation with you.
Not particularly like the most fashionable basketball places that you would think of.
Correct. Very unconventional, you could say. Like you said, not typically places that you would think would have, the best basketball talent or the most basketball interest,
right?
I guess per se, and I think it's kind of funny where life takes you and how I got involved in going to those different places.
Yeah.
But like I say, when I do travel, I do try to incorporate basketball to what I do, and I've been very fortunate that this game has enabled me to see a lot of different places, learn about different people, different cultures, and I've been humbled for it. So absolutely.
And previously, you were spent some time at Uconn.
Yes.
So that's like, for someone in the UK, they're like, Uconn's like a huge name.
Right.
Just tell us a little bit about that before we get into the nitty gritty.
Absolutely. So I was at Uconn for 2 years. Like I said, having gone to a smaller Division III college, moving to and even mostly having experienced in high school basketball. Hadn't really been at the prep level before I got to Uconn. But Division I basketball was, or Division I athletics in general, just a very huge change from the lifestyle, the schedule, the commitment. You learn things, you pick up certain things, staying in hotels for a home game the night before.
So you would have worked with players, like big time players.
Yes. So we had probably, I'm thinking when I was there, some of the more notable players that we had. We had Altry Gilbert, who's injured. He was a 5-star coming out of high school. He's been injured, so he hasn't played as often of late. Rodney Purvis was a big name that we had. We had Amita Brima, who just signed with the Pacers a couple days ago, was there. Kenton Facey is an overseas player, won a national championship as a freshman at Uconn. So again, when you think about Uconn and you think about Uconn basketball, men's and women's, they consider it the basketball capital of the world, just because of the success that both programs have had. So like I said, just generally being on Uconn's campus and being, with that was a humbling experience and something that you learn from.
So with all that, with traveling to different countries, with coaching with different types of players, different styles, you must have kind of got your own philosophy along the way, but like taking bits from here and there and mixing it into a big thing.
Yes.
So I want to talk philosophy.
Absolutely.
And we spoke about it earlier. We went for food, and we were tempted to stay for food and do this interview there. But I want to talk about, first of all, commitment and body language and things like that. So do you reward commitment and body language over talent?
Without a doubt. And I think that, in my years as an assistant, in my years as a head coach, anyone that has played for me can attest to that. My biggest thing is, as far as my overall philosophy, one thing that I actually learned at Uconn in my master's program that waked me up a little bit was, what are the own morals that you have for how you live your life, and for what you do. And the second I hit college, I automatically said that I wanted to give other people the opportunities I didn't have and prevent them from making some of the mistakes I had made. So I think as a coach, you wear many different hats, and you try to put players on a path
Yeah.
to be successful people on the court, but even more so in life. And I think body language has a very large part to do with that. How you brand yourself, how you carry yourself on and off the court. And I think that there are certain things that you need to kind of nip in the butt on the court that will in turn translate off the court.
So give me an example.
Absolutely. So I think, for example, matter of fact, we were just in Atlanta last week. We were in Atlanta last week. We have a couple Division II prospects, even Division I prospects on our team that we were coaching. And I'm very clear with what my expectations are for individuals and for the team, and what the consequences are if those expectations aren't met. So it's a situation where we have very high expectations for our point guard. We give him a chance, give him one chance, give him two chances, a couple mistakes here. He's not necessarily buying in or doing what we're asking him to do him. So we bring in a player who we can trust in that moment to take care of business and get the job done that we need to get done. This point guard, Division II prospect, comes out, sits on the bench, and he's sitting on the bench kind of just leaned back, not really engaged in the game, his arms over the chair, kind of just hanging out to lunch. And he didn't play the rest of the game.
Okay.
He didn't play the rest of the game.
But he's probably one of the best point guards.
He's probably one of our better players.
Yeah.
Without a doubt, probably one of our better players. But again, it goes, especially at this level, at the high school level, and even at the college level. Obviously at the college level, you're coaching for your job, and there's a lot more money involved.
I was going to say, 'cause that's going to have an impact, surely, because if he's your best guy, you must have, in the back of your head, you've got a guy who's above you and above him going,
absolutely,
play that best guy because we need to win.
Yep, for
then,
sure.
But then you're going, he's acting like an idiot, so I'm not going to play him.
Correct. And I think it's about the message that's being sent beyond the court. Because I think even for me, we had, originally this team that I started with in March, we probably had anywhere from 4 to 5 Division I prospects.
Yeah.
Half of those prospects I ended up removing off of the team, or they removed themselves off the team simply because they could not meet the expectations as far as body language.
What were those expectations?
Commitment, showing up to practice promptly, on time. We say, we treat our practices like college practice, so if our practice is at 6 o'clock, our expectation is that you're there by 5:45, stretching, getting shots up, so that when 6 o'clock comes around, we're ready to go. Guys could not do that. Typical teenage excuse of, traffic, or mom has the car, or different things like that, that for whatever reason, those students cannot meet those expectations. And the reason that we, myself included, really hold our players to the high standard is because for these kids that are Division I prospects that want to play at the next level, that's the standard that they're going to be held to.
Yes.
They have that capability, and I'm a firm believer that the earlier on you can establish better habits, the better off you're going to be.
No, makes sense. Makes sense.
So, those were kind of just the main reasons as far as holding them accountable and, the sense of responsibilities
So that would I'm guessing that sort of brings its own sort of mental toughness for the players and things like that.
Absolutely.
It gets them accustomed to what you do, and some of them buy into it, some of them don't, and they
Correct.
fade away.
Correct.
But with mental toughness as well being something, huge in basketball,
For sure.
right? Because
For sure.
you lose a lot of games, you get injured, you got to bounce back, you get shouted at by your coach sometimes.
Yep, absolutely.
And you've got to. Do you train mental toughness? Do you try and implement mental toughness, or is that something you just expect to come naturally with players?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think even in my own playing career, my personal background and upbringing really molded and helped shape who I was as a player and as a person, just as far as what my goals were, what I wanted to accomplish, what I needed to do to accomplish those things. But even with that being said, I think that it's something that again is tough. Can be taught, especially at a younger age, and that can be implemented. Again, with the things that you do, the standards that you hold them to. One thing I always talk about, and a lot of college coaches that I've talked to always talk about, we talk about the quote unquote dog mentality, right? So is that guy, is he a dog? Is he get after it? Does he have grit? Is he, again, that whole concept of just overall toughness.
Do you think that's a natural thing, or do people grow into that, or do they get taught that, or are they just it?
I'll say this, I think that it can be taught. A personal belief of mine is that it's easier to be taught when the said student athlete is younger, just because they older, 17, 18-year-olds kind of have their, not to say it can't change, but they've had their way of doing things, their customs, their upbringing, the coaches that they've had over time.
Yeah.
They may be used to not getting pushed as hard or getting away with certain things, and that kind of goes back to the habits that I was talking about. Is some of these 17 and 18-year-olds that are getting ready to go into college and transition to adulthood the following year, they've established all of these, negative or bad habits that by the time they get to college, it's like it's a culture shock for them. So for younger kids, and them being able to, as a coach, you being able to kind of mold them and prepare them and help them establish those habits earlier on. By the time they are seniors or juniors, they're used to what your expectations are and what to expect at the next level.
So I find that you tend, we got a big golfing class in players where we are in England. There's a big difference between the best player and the worst player.
Yes.
Huge difference.
Yes.
Probably the same everywhere, I don't know. But from traveling to different countries, do you find there's certain upbringings and certain backgrounds that bring out more mental toughness than others? Like when you go to places like Kenya, are those guys just hungry?
Absolutely.
Because the opportunity isn't as big as what it would be in America.
For sure. And I've always kind of, through my own personal experience as a player, as a young kid growing up, and even coaching now, my observation has been that the less that you have, the more you want it. And I feel like, I remember a kid that came over from Nigeria, played at Howard University, came over probably 4 or 5 years ago as a freshman, with a backpack, and those were all of his belongings that he owned. All of his, matter of fact, here in the Poconos at Skills Camp, all of the belongings that he owned. And I watched this kid play. Didn't speak a lot of English at the time.
That's crazy.
Sprinted full speed up and down the court in 95-degree heat. Vocal, rebound, block, pass, outlet, just very basic English. But busted his behind every single opportunity. Typical, kind of just, and like kind of going back to my international experience, it just speaks to how much we take for granted on a daily basis.
I think that's the same at this camp.
For sure. I mean, you have kids here and parents here and even coaches here that sacrifice their name, their reputation, financial resources, time to get these kids to these camps, to give them an opportunity to essentially go to school for free and gain a scholarship, and they don't take full advantage of it. We offer sweatshops, early bird. They play 3 games a day, and it's almost for some of these kids like a vacation. It's like, I'm going to skip this sweatshop. Instead, I'm going to go take a nap in my dorm. I can remember some of the schedules as a college athlete. You might have practice at 6 o'clock in the morning till 8 o'clock. Your classes start at 8. You have a lift at 12 o'clock. You have another evening practice, and then, you're back at it in the gym at 6 o'clock. You're not getting back to your room till 9, 10 o'clock at night. We haven't talked about food. We haven't talked about sleep. We haven't talked about homework. And I feel like, kind of going back to the toughness and the mental toughness aspect of things is, all these kids, especially over here, they say they want to play Division I basketball, or they want to play in the NBA, but they don't necessarily do what they need to do to get there. And I've always been a firm believer in the saying that I've grown up on is, I hear what you say, but I believe what you do. Everyone says that they want to do these things, but they don't actually take the time and effort to do what they need to do to get there.
I think I think that's quite a good thing actually, because I think we're all guilty of that. I'm sure, in some form of life, doing something.
Correct. Absolutely. Absolutely.
If my partner's watching this, and she'll turn around and say, "Yeah, you do that.
Right.
You do that when you're going to do the dishes, right?
Right.
I'm going to do them later.
Right.
Yeah, and I don't do them.
Right. Right. Absolutely.
And sometimes maybe there's a lot more on the line for that than me not doing them than there is a basketball player.
Right.
But no, that's a really valid point. That's crazy. But so you got these guys, then you got your team. Let's say it's your team.
Yep.
How do you keep those energy levels high?
Absolutely. One thing I've always said is, kind of going back to philosophies and morals and things like that, is, a big word that I use in my coaching philosophy is consistency. As a coach, you
It's a good word.
you have to be consistent with what your expectations are, the standard that you hold your players to, throughout all of your years of coaching.
Right.
So, let's say you're coming into a brand new job at a high school, at a college, wherever it may be.
Yeah.
Again, you have to find a balance between discipline and care, but at the same time, you have to set your tone for what your philosophy is going to be, or what the main things, the 3 or 4 main things that you're going to hold your team accountable to or for.
What's yours?
Absolutely. So my biggest thing is, again, in taking into account, the translation between on the court and off the court. I'm very big on respect. Respect for the game, respect for yourself, respect for the people that got you to where you were. Interestingly, off that, the concept of respect, Coach Bob Hurley at St. Anthony's, talked to him and learned a lot from him over the years. Would kick players out of practice for yawning, because he saw it as a sign of disrespect and lack of engagement.
So does that go as far as what they wear, how they present themselves? Do they
Absolutely.
shake hands, how they talk?
Absolutely. And I think, when you're talking with school age kids, particularly, speaking coaching at the high school level, how you present yourself to a college coach, how you present yourself to the community when you go out and do community service, activities. It says a lot about you and who you are as a person. Even body language. You go out and you make a mistake in the game, and your coach takes you out, and there's another chance that you might go back in the game, but instead you're sitting on the sidelines. Your body language, you're slouched, you're looking all over the place like you don't care. That says a lot about who you are as a person.
Yeah, you said something about that at dinner, about the women's team.
Yes.
I'm really intrigued, and I think this is a really good point.
Absolutely.
Because I'm drifting away on my chair. It's like I'm sat down here. I'll keep rolling away. You said something about the women's team, that they filmed the bench.
Yes. So the Uconn women's team, you might remember there was an interview with Coach Auriemma that went viral a few years ago. But they film all their practices.
Right.
They film their games, and there's a particular focus on the bench when they go and they rewatch those tapes on the games. And the biggest thing that they're looking for not the biggest thing, but one of the main things that Coach Auriemma looks for when he's watching over those films is body language on the bench. Are players engaged on the bench? And for those of the Uconn women's basketball fans out there, they have a very hype, very energetic bench. They hit a 3-pointer. They have one of the ladies up and high-fiving down the bench. So Coach Auriemma really harps on that a lot. And a few years ago, Brianna Stewart, WNBA player, All-American at Uconn, champion at Uconn.
So one of the best women's players around.
Arguably, absolutely.
Right, okay.
Definitely in University of Connecticut, and she's young and she has a long career ahead of her. But yes, one of the best women's players around. Did not have the best of body language in one of the games, and Coach Auriemma was not having it. So again, you're talking about one of the best women's basketball players. They had South Carolina the next game up. You're talking about a 40-minute game. Brianna Stewart in that game before South Carolina against Memphis plays 5 minutes out of 40 because her body language, spoke volumes. They're UConn. But again, even just because of Coach Auriemma's persona and his philosophy and the standard that himself, Coach Daly, and the rest of that staff that they hold all of the women to. For him, obviously we talked about the concept of, there's jobs on the line and reputations on the line and things like that. But for him, his best player at that time, it wasn't about winning. It wasn't about winning. It was about the message that he was sending to her, to the rest of the team, and honestly, in essence, to the world, because of the platform that the Uconn women's basketball program is on. That was not going to be accepted or tolerated.
So if you say a group of kids or whatever, again, you're trying to promote good body language, good behavior, attitude, and then they go home and they're not in that environment.
Yes.
Is it really difficult to try and coach them to be like it off the court? It's like can you coach guys about how to act off the court, or do you look after guys off the court?
Absolutely.
Because if you, for instance, our club trainings for a junior team, typical club training, 2 nights a week, 2 hours, an hour and a half maybe each session, game at the weekend, right? So we see them on a Tuesday, we see them on a Thursday, we see them on a Saturday. We got no idea what else is
going on after that, right?
So how would you maintain connection to the kids in time outside of the basketball court?
Absolutely. Honestly, thinking and going back to something we had talked about before, I think the main piece of my philosophy and why I coach and why I do what I do has to do with relationships.
Right.
And I think it goes, there's many aspects and avenues that can go into, but you talk about obviously the relationship between you and your players, and I think even more so your relationship with, yourself and the players' families, and understanding that each player has a different background, a different upbringing, a different environment at home, whether it be positive or negative. You never know. But I think it's your obligation and your responsibility as a coach to know each one of your players on that level, to then be able to relate to them and help them develop in whichever way possible.
And how do you do that?
Absolutely. So I think my biggest thing is, my coach, for me, again, speaking to my personal experience, essentially was a father figure for me. So as a coach, you, especially at the high school level and really any level, you wear several different hats. You coach, father, mentor, psychologist, guidance counselor, scout, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
But I think, again, is my biggest thing with that is you have to show each player that you truly are in it for their best interest, and that you truly care and have an affection for them and for their future. And I think once you do those things, and it's not something that happens overnight. Again, like I said, I hear what you say, but I believe what you do. It's not a matter of just saying this, or a matter of saying, hey, I'm going to get you into this school, or hey, let's meet at this time. It's a matter of actually going out of your way and showing them is being a presence off the court, being a presence outside of school. The player gets caught up in a situation, going to pick them up in whatever situation they are in, and bringing them home, or hosting family dinners. Because I think one big thing that I've always noticed is
You've done that?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think that's I think when you do things with your team and for your players off the court, it humanizes you in a sense. Having been in education, having been a coach before, when you're that hard guy on the court, or you're that guy that's always harping on them in the hallways when you're in school, it's like, oh, Coach G, Mr. G's on this, he's doing this, why is he always gonna ride me for this, or why is he always getting at me for that? But when you do things for them, and you have bowling nights, or you go play laser tag, or you invite them over to the house to go swimming, and you show that you care for them on a different level off the basketball court, it humanizes yourself as a coach. Because oftentimes the players only kind of see the professional or the coach side. They don't see the Khalil side, or the Paul side of who you actually are as a person, and what your life is like outside of basketball and outside of school.
Okay.
So I think that for me in my years of coaching has really helped me develop a relationship with my players, and kind of, not that they don't know that I care already, but it kind of takes it that extra step.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. No, I'm with you. See, I've never. It's difficult because there's different rules as well. Like,
correct, absolutely.
Have you got the magic word of safeguarding over your? Yeah, it can be a nightmare.
Absolutely. I know.
It can be a nightmare to try and create those relationships whilst abiding by those rules.
And it's a fine line as a professional too, as far as what you can do and what And I think that's where again, parent buy-in and parent relationships play a really, really big role in it. Because at the end of the day, that is, especially when you think about coaching at the college level or coaching at the prep school level, when in many instances, these players are leaving home where they're from to come stay on campus with you for 10 months a year. That's a parent that's entrusting you with their child.
Yeah, it's a big commitment.
It's a huge commitment. It's a huge responsibility. So they have to have that level of trust.
Do you feel the weight on your shoulders with that? Because I've brought a couple of guys with me to this camp, and they're not necessarily my guys.
Right.
I know the coach, and the parents have never met me before in their lives, and they've said, right, okay, you guys jump on a plane with this guy.
Right.
And
Yep.
you come to another country and
Yes.
play basketball.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm like, ooh, that's a bit like, you know, it's a lot of pressure. It's a lot of
Yes.
weight on the shoulders. Do you feel that with kids coming into the programs?
I do, but at the same time, I think with coaching, and especially when you're working with youth, the biggest question that you have to answer is, why do you do what you do?
Yeah.
Is why do you do what you do? And I think, you know, for individuals like myself and you, there's a genuine meaning behind why we bring these kids over and why we give them the opportunities that we do, is because we truly care about, you know, them as people, and we want to see them do well, and we want to see what's best for them.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Yeah.
So I think that plays a big role in it. I think it plays a big part in it.
So I'm going to test you a little bit now, because
Uh-oh.
everything's been quite positive, and every coach I've spoken to, it's all about, we're going to do this with players, we do that with players. Then as part of your own development,
Yes.
now we're going to go to as a coach, and
Absolutely.
how you develop yourself. So,
Absolutely.
first of all, I'll go, the straight answer is how you develop yourself.
Absolutely.
How do you work on you? Because you spend all this time working with the kids.
Yes.
And you do it, you're writing all these session plans, you're making all these phone calls, I don't know what you're working on, but you're always working here. I have no idea what you're doing, but I'm guessing it's for the kids.
Right.
So when do you get to work on you, and how do you do that?
Absolutely. You know, I think a couple pieces to that. One of the biggest pieces of advice that I got when I was in college, and I'm still working on it tremendously, is you can't take care of others if you don't take care of yourself.
Right.
So, you know, sometimes, you know, again, like I said, the last 3 weeks, I've been up and down the East Coast between Florida, Atlanta, Jersey, Pennsylvania, New York, Connecticut. So it's a matter of, how do I get myself in the right mind space to take care of myself, to then take care of others. So again, you know, whether it's something as simple as, you know, reading or going on a run just to clear that mind space, you know, because as we all know, if we as basketball coaches, if we want to do our job the right way, it's essentially a full-time job. The hours that we put into it and the things that we do, and it can become very stressful over time. So sometimes you kind of need to find those pockets of time to kind of just table the work and say, you know what, I need to focus in on myself right now, because I cannot be as effective as I'm capable of being in the current mindset that I'm in.
So you think about, to think about what you need to do, you've got to kind of clear out what you have done, and
Yes.
like, how do you do that for you?
Absolutely.
I'm sure it's different for every person.
It is, you know, so for me, like I said, you know, running is therapy for me.
Yeah, you're running, I don't know what the heat, today's been like one of the hottest days I think I've ever experienced in my life.
Right.
And I'm walking to Walmart with a liter of water. I'm burning up, and you're going for a flipping run.
Yeah.
I don't.
And for me, you know, my biggest thing again is it clears my headspace. So for me, it's just whatever stress or whatever things or thoughts or pieces of work I have on my mind, it's an opportunity for me. So it's my reset button. It's my reset button. It's my, all right, let's hit the button. We have a lot going on right now. You know, I'm a person where I think about a million different things at one time, and I don't necessarily finish. I think about this thing, I'm like, oh crap, I gotta go do that thing. So for me, it's like, all right, it's time to pause. Let's hit the reset button and kind of get our thoughts together. You know, I think the other thing for me too is, having coaching for a little bit now too, is like I said, you know, you hold your players to the standard. You set these expectations, these high expectations for these players that they don't know they're capable of attaining, but you know they're capable of attaining. So on the flip side, for me, like, you know, I started coaching at 17, 18 years old. So for me, coaching kids that were a little bit younger than me, if not older than me, it forced me at that point in my career to hold myself to that same exact standard, if not a higher standard.
Don't ask them to do something you wouldn't do.
Exactly. So it's not like I said, you know, I hear what you say, but I believe what you do. So, you know, I'm asking all these kids to do these things, to get in the weight room, to stay on top of their academics. Mind you, I was coaching when I was in college. So, you know, I was now trying to hold myself to those standards, and they served as the motivation for why I did what I did. So, all right, I have a test, I'm not as prepared, all right, I'm gonna stay up and study as long as I can to get these grades. Was I a school person? Couldn't stand school. Was good at it, but couldn't stand it, right? So, you know, it was a matter for me of prioritizing and setting goals for myself, because I knew that my players were watching, and they were going to follow my example, and if I held them to a certain standard that I myself was not meeting,
Yeah.
who was I to tell them to do such?
Okay.
So
So the test question then is simple.
yeah, is it?
What I like to know, it's normally what's the biggest mistake, but I've kind of changed the question a little.
Yeah.
Because I think as coaches, if you make a mistake, something happens afterwards. Something always happens.
For sure,
afterwards.
for sure.
So what's the best mistake you've ever made?
The best mistake I ever made. Oof. I have to think. The best mistake I ever made.
So it could be anything that's happened from a bad tactic to a bad training session, but something good just being produced from it. A bad bit of
Absolutely.
advice, but
The best mistake, oh, this is a good one. Here we go. Happened to me a year ago. The best mistake I ever made was leaving higher education and the University of Connecticut and going to Florida. And I say that because a lot of people don't know this, but when I went to Florida, I had accepted a head coaching position at a brand new prep school that had opened up.
okay.
Brand new prep school down in Florida. Was promised that all these things were going to be taken care of. I had recruited 8 to 9 boys in a matter
Yeah.
of 3 weeks to go down to that school with me, and I'm very big on my word. I'm very big on keeping my word and following through with the things that I say. Long story short, within a matter of 2 months, the school, which is still up and running, essentially collapsed. So there were a lot of promises that were broken, a lot of things that weren't taken care of, that we were told were going to be taken care of, to the point where myself and my family sacrificed at least $10,000 to be able to support the boys that were down there. And it was a whirlwind of experience, running around trying to make sure the boys were in the best spot possible once the school and that kind of fell through. But in short, for me, it taught me a lot about myself. You know, I'm a very ambitious person. I'm a big go-getter. You know, when I hear an idea, I like to or an opportunity, something that pops up like that head coaching position did, a bunch of thoughts are going in my mind of what I can do and how I can shape and how I can mold this.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, while that position wasn't what it was, it enabled me to go to Trinity Prep, establish a relationship with a phenomenal head coach in Tony DiGiovanni, establish a relationship with a phenomenal group of young men, taught me a lot about things that I need to be careful of and be cautious of moving forward in my own career and learning from that mistake. But at the same time, I can pretty confidently say that if it weren't for me going through all of that and traveling down to Florida in such a short amount of time, that I wouldn't have this opportunity that I have today to be in a full-time coaching position at Montverde. Which I know is going to develop me further as a coach and as a person. So I say it was the best mistake that I ever made because, you know, I took a very big hit emotionally, mentally. It was a very stressful point for me in my life, but at the same time, I was able to learn from it, and it put me in the position that I'm currently sitting in today.
That's interesting, because something like that's scaring me at the moment. So
right.
I'm in a position where I'm very nervous. So there's a lot of risk involved in certain things, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And it just makes you think. It makes you gather all the facts. You know, get all of the information before you jump on something real quick. You know, we hear about, you know, even just generally in life, we hear about these opportunities to go and do these things or step out of our comfort zone to pursue an opportunity that we think may be great for us in the long run without actually doing our research. And even for me, you know, at that time I was so harped up and excited at the opportunity that I was afraid to ask questions. You know, you think about that now and you're like, all right, you know, I put myself in this situation, I take responsibility and hold myself accountable for it, but I'm not going to let it happen again how it just happened. You know, so an opportunity comes up and you kind of just, you know, you want to gather all your facts and make sure you have, you know, everything in order and in a line so that, you know, you don't put yourself, your loved ones, and the people you care about in that situation.
Oh, it's got me thinking now. I just changed topics quick.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Don't think too much.
Go back onto the court then. I've got a couple of questions left. I was trying to kind of link them all in, but it doesn't really link because I'm just completely gone off the cuff with that one. As a coach, it's always, I watch a lot of stuff online. I'm sure you guys do as well, but you'd be surrounded by a lot more basketball than probably we are. What trends are you seeing now in coaching? Like regards to styles of play, styles of coaching. Like we're seeing a big thing at the moment about player-led approaches and game-based approaches. Like what trends are you seeing as a coach around and about the people around you?
Absolutely. You know, I think honestly speaking, and even going back to a little bit of myself is not necessarily on the court stuff. I think it translates to on the court, but I think you're starting, especially in the college game and even a little bit in high school, you're starting to see a wave of young head coaches. You're seeing a wave of young head coaches that, a couple things, that have a lot of energy.
Yeah.
But I think even more so, as we know, times are changing with the players and with mentalities and styles of play and things like that. But I think with this wave of younger coaches, particularly at the high school level, they're able to relate a little bit more to what the current climate of youth basketball is.
Yes.
And I think the other thing too that I've always said for myself is, as a younger coach, I'm able to relate to the kids, but I was also brought up in that old school discipline kind of style of basketball where we kind of serve as that bridge between the old generation and the new generation, and we can kind of find that medium.
Yes.
Between in terms of how we relate, how we speak to, and how we teach our players.
Yeah, because I see a lot of camp. I've seen guys.
Absolutely.
And
Yep.
kids are going, yes sir, yes sir, yes sir, yes
Right.
sir. And I've also seen the coaches sit down and say, guys, you're doing a great job.
Right.
What do you think you need to do next?
Yes. And that's the biggest thing too, is knowing, and that's even one thing that I've developed and evolved myself as a coach in, is that you kind of, that whole tough love aspect as far as, again, you might be yelling them and getting in them, on the court and demanding this and demanding that, but again, what is the purpose behind that? Why are you doing that? And then what are you showing them off the court to show, why you're doing that? So that's again a big piece of that balance.
Because if you bring it back to how we're saying about players' body language over talent, do you think something could be similar with coaches, like body language, encouragement over X's and O's, or
Absolutely.
how kids respond to either?
For sure. And again, that was my biggest thing as a younger coach, is I was always, harping on and demanding these certain things, and I thought that I was showing my players that I truly cared about them, off the court, but it was a matter of how was I doing that, to the point where almost, earlier on in my coaching career, it was a matter of, I was this tough guy, I was always yelling, I was always getting on guys, and it almost got to the point where, conversations were a one-way street, where players may have been, scared to approach me about something that was going on off the court.
You say something, they all say yes.
Right, exactly, almost like a yes man. And it's funny you say that too, because that's one thing when I look for, in talking now, when I think about and look into hiring assistant coaches, the first thing I tell all of them is like, listen, I don't want a yes man. I want someone that's going to kind of,
Test you,
correct me, kind of put me on my spot, challenge my opinions, and challenge my thoughts. And that was a big thing for me as a younger coach, is I felt like, players were almost borderline shutting down, where they weren't comfortable, or not comfortable, they were scared. They were scared to come to me if they didn't necessarily agree with something that I was saying, or to offer me feedback, or to offer me, or to have a genuine and legitimate conversation about something that they were feeling. And I feel like that's very important as a coach, is you have to be able to, especially with your leaders on and off the floor, you have to be able to have those two-way conversations where you can have productive, meaningful dialogue. And that's something, even to this day and even now, I feel like I've been progressively getting better at, is again finding that medium and finding that balance between how you communicate to your players and what and how you show them, those certain things.
So that I'm guessing that's going to be down to kind of what other coaches you've mentored or what other experiences have you had.
For sure.
So is there anyone particular that you really buy into, or anyone particular you think maybe is ahead of the game a little bit for a coach, and maybe a bit of an unknown person that people can Google and look up? Or
I mean, off the top of my head, and I'll think about an unknown person, but off the top of my head, I go right to Coach Auriemma at Uconn. I think Coach Auriemma, as far as how he relates to his, again, I said this a little bit earlier in the interview. Coach Auriemma is someone that knows, in his 30 some odd years of coaching, he knows how to relate to, and he knows each last one of his players, hundreds of players, on an individual level. Yeah. He knows what he needs to get, he knows what he needs to do, what he needs to say, how he needs to act to get every last one of those players to buy into what he's doing so that the entire group can be successful. So off the top of my head, he's one that hands down comes to my mind.
Anyone you think is ahead of the game, anyone you think is, even maybe someone who's doing a good job with a not so good group.
Absolutely. Thinking. I mean, even I think, I give him a huge kudos is, Coach DiGiovanni, who I worked under at Trinity Prep this year, was an assistant for Coach Hurley. So again, just at St. Anthony's, just speaking to the coaching tree and the impact that coaches have on the network of individuals that they've worked with. But I mean, I look at Coach DiGiovanni at Trinity Prep. This was his second year. This past year was his second season there, my first year with him. And Trinity Prep was a school that wasn't necessarily notorious for their athletic program. Nonetheless, their basketball program kind of had this culture of mediocrity per se. Not necessarily this culture of mediocrity, but just wasn't a program that was used to winning, I guess. And I think
comfort zone.
Yes. And even when I was in Ithaca, New York, it was very similar. There was a certain way of how things had been done, and people didn't want to, again, step out of their comfort zone. To change. They were afraid to change, what they were comfortable doing. And one thing that a mindset that I established in Ithaca that, again, kind of serves as a prong, you could say, of my coaching philosophy is why settle for mediocrity when there's potential for greatness. And I think that is a mindset that, depending on what culture you're a part of, is something that's important to examine. So again, for Coach DiGiovanni, this past year we were 17-10. The year before, his first year there, it was a 500 season. But I think even just the environment, the family environment, and the genuine care that he showed with each one of those young men within the program, from the varsity level all the way down to the JV level, was spectacular. And again, I mean, he learned from one of the best in Coach Hurley. Was a very successful coach himself in Jersey before he came down to Florida. So there are some things that
so for guys
he even taught me that I'll take with me.
So guys listening back in England, they can Google those guys and they can read about it, watch some of their stuff.
Absolutely.
Interesting. Okay, well, I think we've gone for about 43 minutes, which wasn't really the plan, but I think we might probably need to leave it there because I'm very tired.
Oh, absolutely. And we got a long week of camp ahead of us.
Oh, God, don't get me started. Right, thank you very much.
Absolutely
really
appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Cheers.
Thank you. Yes.